Hey, what's up? I'm Adam. If you're new and if you're returning, then you know what's good. Today I want to go over the application process for tech jobs and how I managed to kind of get multiple offers in my most recent application process as I've just started a new job. And obviously I've got quite a few questions about like tips for different stages. I'm going to go through each and kind of explain what I think helped me land the offers that I got at the compensation packages that I did get as well. So it will be like the job search process, then we'll talk about CVs, also talk about like that initial phone call, so forth. So let's just get into it. I will say again, this is just my experience. I'm not pretending that I know everything. I haven't been in tech for like 10 years and so whatever, but I've been pretty successful so far. So let's just get into it. Okay, so part one is about the job search. So of course, this is your first point when you are searching for companies that you might want to work with, kind of the industries you might want to work in. Do you want to work in like the finance industry in the tech departments, or are you looking for like tech first companies who they're actually technology based, their products and services? And the first thing I would say is be clear on what you want and what you don't want and be open to everything else. So what I mean by this is I knew that this time around, being able to work remotely anywhere in the world was a really big thing. A lot of the jobs that I'd looked at were like partially remote, so you could work from home, but you had to be in the UK. And I really didn't want that because I knew I could do my job from anywhere. If I can do it from home in the UK, then I can do it from anywhere. So that was something that I knew. And so I was only interested in jobs that could offer me that. Same with things I didn't want. I'll give you an example. A company reached out to me, and we'll talk about like companies reach out in a moment. And they were really interested in my skill set and everything like that. And the pay was pretty good from what they were saying, but it was a betting company. And I had no interest in working for a betting company. I knew that for a number of reasons. I wouldn't be interested in forwarding that kind of product and service. I knew I couldn't get behind it with my heart and things like that. And so I rejected it. So it's not just because it's a job that comes to you means you have to take it. But speaking about jobs coming to you, how did that happen? Well, LinkedIn is going to be your best friend, I think, in the job search period. All the jobs that I got, I didn't actively apply for any of them, as in all of the recruiters came to me. So I didn't put in an application for anything, or like recruiters would kind of DM me. And I've said this, I think I've said this before, but I imagine this is what it feels like to be an Instagram model or celebrity. Your DMs must look like, I imagine, what my LinkedIn one does now that I'm in tech and I have these skills and this experience. And so these recruiters kind of reached out to me and we went from there. So LinkedIn is really important. Keeping your LinkedIn up to date and with the key skills that you have is really just non-negotiable at this point if you're looking for a job. And that doesn't mean you have to be on LinkedIn all the time. Like I'm not somebody who does all those posts and things like that, and that's not my platform. But all my experience is there, and like you can see, I've worked with certain technologies, done certain things, worked with certain programming languages. Like that's clear. So if somebody looks or is searching a recruiter for SRE, that's in my profile too. That's going to pop up. And if they're searching for keywords like Python, or they're searching for keywords like Java or AWS or GCP, they will come across my profile. Okay, so that's people coming to you. But what if you're kind of in your early phases and you're not finding many people coming to you? So it's the opposite. The 3 websites I use, there's loads of websites you can use. There's even tech specialist recruitment websites and stuff like that. But I found that there is a plethora of jobs, and they'll always usually be on one of these 3, as well as all those other places. LinkedIn job searches, Indeed, and Google Jobs. Because these kind of like amalgamate all the jobs that are out there in all these different places, that people are going to put their jobs on these 3 sites because they know that's going to get the most traction, as well as maybe other sites. So I don't think you can go wrong if you are using one or more of those 3 in your job search. So next is a few tips about CVs. So obviously, depending on what stage you're at, you should really have your CV kind of before you start your job search, or some sort of background into it. But it may be that you're kind of looking and getting a feel for jobs, and then you kind of build your CV out, wherever it is. But it is easier if your CV is already ready, so that if you see a job or a recruit reaches out to you and they said you have a CV, boom, you can give it to them. So yes, the CV, a simple, straightforward CV is going to get you the furthest. Now, in terms of structure, you can kind of Google online like a technical CV structure, but giving an example of what mine actually looks like, people don't really care so much about what you say you can do versus, okay, show me what you did, right? And which is always why it's better to show your experience and your capabilities, which is why work experience is the first thing I have on mine. So I have the experience at my previous job, and I also kind of have my boot camp in there because I was contracted through them. So I have 2 kind of work experience blocks there, and I don't actually have anything else in mine. I've had loads of other jobs. I've been working since I was 16, so that's what, 9 years. And but that's not really what these people are interested in if they're coming to me for tech. So that's where I'd have that. And in terms of how the work experience bit is structured, I like to say what I've done, kind of what tools I used and what was the outcome. Clean, with making sure that I focus on the keywords I know they're looking for, the key technologies. And I'll give an example. I'll put it up on the screen here so you can see. For here, this example will be AWS Cloud Security and Automation. Then there's a bit of an explanation. Python scripting used to automate server-side encryption, key rotation, security reinforcement of VPCs, and other security-related features of cloud resources. Boom. Look how many keywords are already there. Cloud security, automation, Python, encryption, VPCs, cloud, like those kind of words are already there. So if you're a recruiter looking to see if someone has those, basically make it as easy as possible for people to know that you have the skills that they want, right? No one wants to sit and think, they didn't say what language they used to script this in, so I don't know if they actually do know Python or whatever it is. Whereas if it's explicit, they know to tick it off the checklist. Yep, that candidate has that, they have that, they have that, I'm interested. And that's pretty much how I have it broken down in my CV. And I think we could probably have a whole conversation about CVs, and maybe I'll run through mine explicitly or one like mine. And yes, but that's kind of that stage. So, okay, so you got your work experience. If you don't have work experience, I think it's really useful to have projects here. Because when I had my first CV, I had a project section, because I obviously hadn't worked from anywhere, but I had done a series of projects in my my training period, and that was explicitly there, but kind of in the same style, like what was I doing, what did I achieve. The next part of the CV is going to kind of be the technical skills. It's here, it's just literally a list, like a little table, especially saying, okay, what programming languages you use, what DevOps technologies, things like that. And so here again, it's quickly easy to see, okay, they've worked with this. Okay, what cloud providers have they worked with? You've worked with Azure, worked with GCP, worked with AWS, not all of them necessarily, but you know, you're going to list that there. And so people know, again, you can see, boom, click, meets the criteria. Next, in my CV, I have professional qualifications. So I have some cloud certificates and things like that. And that's where you're going to put that. And then finally, I have my education. I studied geography, university, and obviously all those other things that I've done, my A-levels and all that. And I have that there because obviously it's important to show my academic achievements, but it's not the most important. Like in all fairness, in this whole list of things, that matters really the least. Because, okay, what experience do you have? What projects have you done? Okay, what's your actual, your stack? What have you worked with? What are you familiar with? Okay, so now you've made it past that stage, right? You've given your CV, you've done your application, or recruiters come out and they've asked you for your CV. Where are you now? Well, now you're at the stage where you're going to start speaking to people on the phone or through video, or maybe even in the office, depending on how the interview process is set up with that company. Now, here are where things can vary quite a lot from company to company and how they want to go about doing this. I had some jobs where the process took maybe a couple of weeks. I had another job where the process took 2 days. So the first thing you're gonna have is an initial phone call, and this is usually to get to know you, right? Get to know a bit more about what you do, what you've been doing for the last few years in your current role. You know, what kind of experience do you have? What kind of projects have you worked on? Kind of getting a feel for you. They're also going to ask questions about where you want to go, the direction that you're looking to go in, like what do you want from a role, where are you trying to progress in your career? Because of course companies don't want to spend all this time hiring you and going through all this process only for you to quit because you've realised, actually, I'm not interested in this at all and I don't want to go in this direction, because then they've got to do it all over again. So they're trying to pull that out of you. So have those, you can have answers to kind of basic questions like that ready to go, because you know they're probably going to ask you about your experience, what you've been doing, where you want to go, and things like that. It's also really important at this point that you use it as an opportunity to get more information about the company, right? And if that's a place that you want to go, because the process for tech interviews or applying for a tech role can be quite intense. Like, you're going to have maybe multiple calls. You're also probably going to have to do a test of some sort. And these things are not, they can be quite taxing. So you don't want to be going for roles that really you could have understood in the first phone call that you didn't want to do it because it doesn't meet X, Y, B, and Z of your criteria. So use that. Come with questions. Are you interested in okay, career progression here, or will I get to use certain technologies? Obviously you'll have the tech stack, but what if I want to kind of go into different overlap with the departments, or am I going to have an opportunity to see this, to work on that, to touch this? So get an idea and feel like, what is my day-to-day going to look like? I always love asking this question, like what would my day-to-day look like what would I expect it to deliver, and things like that, so I can get a feel for what every day of my life is going to be like, or every working day for the next whatever period of time I'm there. So get a feel for that. After that then is where things kind of change, and this is why it's really important to get clarity on what's happening in the next stage of the interview, or how the interview process is going to go, because some companies, it may go straight to a more technical interview. Most will go through some sort of situational interview, where there's like general, or how you would behave in certain situations. Definitely get clarity on that. But let's assume that you're going now into a situational interview, right? Where they want to get an understanding of how you work in certain environments, under certain pressures, or deal with certain issues. And what you've probably heard of, you may have heard of it, is that the best way to answer these questions is in the STAR method. So the S is for situation, what was going on. T is for task, okay, so what did you have to do? And then A is for the action, so what did you actually do then to deal with this task, to meet the requirements of this task and handle the situation? And then R, what was the results? And often if you find you're following this kind of strategy or this kind of flow, it's easy to make it clear about what you did and what you achieved, right, whilst providing context to the interviewer. So it's a really good method to follow, and when you're preparing some answers to some of these questions, follow this method. And I'll kind of give you an example again. The kind of questions that you're going to get here are maybe things like, how would you deal with, or explain a time you did something. So it might be like, explain a time you had to deal with a difficult coworker, or explain a time where you had to do a project with technologies that you were unfamiliar with, right? Like you was given a task and you had no idea how to use these particular tools. What did you do? How did you get around it? And you're going to give your explanation, right? You're going to give your star bullet point an explanation of what you did. These questions obviously are going to vary depending on the specific role, but with the situational one, like I said, interview, they're trying to get an idea of how you think, how you work in a corporate environment, and what you'd be like if you was on the team. Now, there may also be some technical questions thrown in when they're trying to get a basic understanding of how much you know and what you've been exposed to, again, because you may actually have this interview with someone different to the initial call. So they may actually ask you a few more questions. So don't be afraid, and make sure that you're prepared for that as well. Be prepared for them to ask you, like, for an SRE position, okay, so what's the difference between an SLO and SLI and SLA? And how do you determine a good SLI? Right, and if you're not ready for those sorts of questions, then it can be like, oh, although you kind of should if you're an SRE, but anyway. So next is the technical test or technical interview. Now these again can vary a lot, and I've had different experiences, so I'll kind of give you an example of each. One of the jobs, I was given a task to do at home. So I hadn't seen it, and once I clicked on it, I had 30 minutes to complete this task. I was actually told the wrong thing from my recruiter, that I was going into a coding test, or I can't remember what he said. Anyway, that was not what I went into at all. It was an architecture type of question, like how would you architect the solution to this particular cloud issue, where you had some web servers, you had a reverse proxy, Nginx. How are you going to configure this using the resources that you know exist in this cloud provider? And about preparing for these things, I would say just make sure that you understand the job role and the profession as a whole, right? So, okay, I know that they're looking for somebody who has experience with AWS architecture, or things like this. They've listed it, and so often the technical interview or test will represent what they're looking for, like it will correlate closely with that. So just keep that in mind when you're preparing for that. The other one, and obviously by far is a lot harder, is when you have a technical interview, i.e. you're going to do the test, whatever test that they have set for you, in front of them. And I have an example of that. The most recent one I did was in front of 2 of the team, and I was given this interview question and told, okay, share your screen, how would you go about doing this? And you're like there, you're like, okay, fun, and you've got to do it. And again, this will vary for the particular type of tech role that you are going for. Developers will have very different probably interview processes to what I have as an SRE and kind of in like the DevOps space. But yeah, you kind of have to go for it. I try to get as much information as possible within reason from beforehand. Like, I do really need to know if this is a coding interview or not, like a coding test, so that I know what to kind of prepare for generally. And so ask questions. Don't be afraid to be like, okay, is this, just so I know, is this going to be like this sort of interview? Is this going to be this sort of technical interview? Is it going to be asking me these sorts of questions? Like, getting an idea, because obviously it's going to help you. If you're shooting in the dark, then it's a little bit harder. When you are actually answering these questions in either scenario, whether it's going to be a takeaway or it's going to be a in-person or like, you know, in the interview setting, I think there are some key things that you can do to help with that test. And the first thing is kind of clarifying what is being asked of you. So if you're reading, it may mean underlying certain stuff, like if it's a takeaway test, and like breaking down certain keywords and putting things together. If it is in a interview setting, then you might be asking questions to clarify. And this is actually a really important thing to do, because it shows that this is even showing your skill already. Right? If you start asking certain questions about, okay, you've asked me this, but what kind of technology is this? Is that including this, or do I have access to this resource to get to this answer? Suddenly you're going to be starting to say certain things that is going to suggest that you know certain things about your role and what would be expected of you. Obviously with the takeaway one, it's really just about you understanding the question more so that you can answer it in the best way possible. After that, you might want to kind of brainstorm some ideas. If it's like an architecture type question, I kind of brainstormed some of the things I knew, okay, some of the services that I'd interacted with that I knew would be useful for this, right? Some of the tools, some of the technologies that I'd worked with that would help with this question. Because then when I come to write out my little essay bit, I can just pick from like my plan basically. And then you kind of just have to go for it. And try to be as clear and concise as possible. When it's face-to-face and that sort of interview, don't be afraid to speak out loud. In fact, they really want you to. It's the worst thing, and we all do it, like we're nervous, and so we're kind of thinking things through in our head. You kind of got to remember to speak out loud, because they obviously don't know what you're thinking. They can only see maybe your mouth moving a little bit, but they don't know why you're doing certain things. And maybe they'll ask, so don't be too surprised if someone asks and be like, okay, why did you do this, if you're not really verbalizing as much? And that's your prompt to remember, okay, speak out loud a little bit more, like you need to talk a little bit more through this. Even if you don't know exactly what you're doing, like just saying that, okay, well, in this situation, I probably would have done this. In this one, it's slightly different. So I take that information I know from there, but. And the final stage is you're going to get some offers. Now I had multiple offers here, and so this was the first time I'd kind of been in this situation. When you do have multiple offers and the companies do want you, you can use that, leverage that, because if they know that you could walk away tomorrow because there's another company who's already made you an offer, companies will want to give you more if they really want you, right? They want to give you more of a compensation package. Or if you've said, actually, I need to be able to work abroad this many amount of months in the year versus what you said originally, you kind of have that leverage because you have other options. When you only have one option, obviously, it limits how you can maneuver. It's not the end of the world, because if that one company really wants you, then there's room to negotiate too. But yes, don't rush. I'd definitely say that. Don't panic and think that you have to take the first job that you get. If it's not right for you, or if you think that you maybe, be better off getting your feelers out a little bit more, say you need some time. Like, I need a few days to think about this, or and most of the time they'll understand. It's a big thing you're signing up to be a member of this company for hopefully the foreseeable future. That's that. I've kind of just glossed over each section and tried to give as much concise information as possible. There's probably sections here that should deserve their own videos, and I'll do that another time. I kind of go into things, but for now, that's it. I hope you enjoyed this. Let me know if you are in the application process at the moment. If you've got any more questions or something you want me to explain in more depth, then comment that. Otherwise, good luck with wherever you are in your career, your tech career. Thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.